Hello, I'm Skyler Zunk.
And I'm Ben Wilson.
And you're listening to the America First Energy Podcast. We're launching this podcast to shine a light on what we know to be true. America needs more abundant, affordable energy, and that energy needs to be American-made. Energy and power is the most important element of daily life that we take for granted. We don't think about power until it goes out in the storm or we're shocked by high energy and gas prices at the pump. Unleashing American energy with an all-of-the-above energy portfolio must be a priority. We cannot rely on foreign energy and foreign supply chains to power our nation. We are in an all-out race with China to meet the needs of our growing economy. It's time to put the resources, the research, and the innovation to work to create more American-made energy. We'll continue to bring to you the conversations and analysis of the people and the topics who matter most.
That's right, Skyler, and we couldn't be more excited to launch the podcast with Virginia's top energy leader, Director of the Virginia Department of Energy, Glenn Davis. Director Davis will have a lot to talk about in terms of challenges Virginia faces and the growth in energy that the Commonwealth must meet.
We're looking forward to the conversation with Director Davis right after this. Well, welcome back to the first episode of the America First Energy Podcast. We could not be more thrilled to have Virginia's top energy leader, Director Glenn Davis of the Virginia Department of Energy, joining us today. I first met Director Davis when he was then Delegate Davis, and with that title change, I got confused for about a year. But Delegate Davis served in the House of Delegates here in Virginia for almost a decade.
I did, yeah.
And then was tapped by Governor Youngkin to join his administration as the Director of the Energy Department. You have a huge job in front of you. Virginia is facing unprecedented growth in energy demand, largely brought on by the power-hungry data centers. Governor Youngkin has stressed that it's a challenge to meet, to power our own homes and businesses, but also an opportunity for the Commonwealth to reinvest in Virginia-made energy. How's the department balancing this growth for demand while preserving affordability and reliability?
Sure. Well, the governor came out in 2022 with his all-the-above, all-American energy plan, right? And it was a recognition that in 2020, there was estimates that Virginia would have almost no economic growth going forward. I don't know why the last administration thought that, but that's what they based everything on. And 1% to 2% growth in power demand year over year. Now we're looking at 6.5% year-over-year growth in power demand. We're one of the largest growing states in the nation. Just in the last 3 years alone, we've had over $100 billion of new capital investment in the state. So it does present an interesting situation. And we looked at this and said, okay, we have to be able to step up and meet this energy demand. How do we do it? And the first set of principles that the governor rolled out was it's got to be affordable. It's got to be reliable. We know it's got to be innovative, and we want it to be increasingly clean. And so we looked at how do we get that model going. And the big thing that we recognized is we need more baseload power. Ultimately, you cannot. Everyone may disagree on what type of power we should use and what we should retire. But the fact of the matter is, all of them agree on one thing. When they hit the light switch, they want the lights to come on, right? And so the sun's not always shining, the wind's not always blowing. How do we get the baseload power? And that's when the governor came out with his moonshot that Virginia will be one of the first, if not the first state, to have a small modular reactor for nuclear, which provides a significant amount of new baseload power, and then also move forward on new growth in natural gas. So it really is an all the above, pulling all the electrons we can get so we maintain our status as the data center capital of the world and continue growing our economic opportunities.
Now, as we see this 6.5% year-over-year growth in demand, do you think we're going to be able to keep up with that with Virginia generated energy? Is that the goal?
That's the goal. Yeah. And yes, with the last administration in Washington, it would have been tougher.
Yeah.
Because we know we need more natural gas growth. It just is what it is. We've modeled this a number of different ways. You cannot get to where we need to be. You can't keep the lights on in Virginia as you start looking over the next decade under the requirements under the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which tries to basically ban natural gas in 2045. It doesn't work. But now with the administration we have in Washington, the opportunity to bring in new natural gas, and some of the conversations we've been having in the General Assembly, we definitely have the ability to grow new power in Virginia, Virginia generated, to make sure that we meet the growing demands that we're seeing in the economy.
That's incredible. Well, here at Energy Right, we're huge fans of Governor Youngkin's all of the above approach to energy, and importantly, he's rejected the either-or dichotomy. We don't have to choose between wind and solar and gas and coal. We want all of it, and he phrases it as a both-and scenario. We're blessed with a broad array of energy tech serving Virginians every single day. We're pretty diverse. We have natural gas, nuclear, solar, onshore, offshore wind coming online, pumped hydro with the world's biggest battery and standalone battery storage as well. But we're pretty skewed right now. And not that that's a bad thing, but 80 to 85% of our power is coming from natural gas and nuclear alone. Where do you see that balance shaking out in the future? How is that pie going to be divvied up in your view?
So I don't know if we're going to see it be much different. Solar is going to continue to grow significantly, right? We're already seeing that. Offshore wind, who knows where that goes. Obviously, we're very proud of the CVAL project. It's on time, on budget. There was a little bit of a cost overrun, nothing to do with Dominion. It was just PJM's interconnect prices went up. So we're very proud of that project. It'll be coming online soon. But we're also going to see nuclear grow. Nuclear today is a little over 30% of our power in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But over the next 10 years, we're going to be seeing new nuclear power plants in the form of SMR, small modular reactors, coming online. We're going to see more natural gas coming online. So as we bring on more solar, more natural gas, more nuclear, those ratios may stay about the same, but they're all going to increase significantly.
So those pie slices might look the same, but the whole pie is getting bigger. That's
much
the
bigger.
Goal.
When you realize that we need to bring on, by 2030, we need to bring on 30 new gigawatts of power in the Commonwealth, which is literally double what we have today. So people may look at it and say, well, solar's not going to grow that much if we're going to keep the same ratios. That's not accurate at all. Solar's going to grow significantly, especially with battery storage. We always say that the sun's not always shining, which is completely true.
Yep.
And the peak power demands, which is what you build your power capacity for, is right around dusk. But with longer and less expensive battery storage, solar becomes more and more of a dispatchable power source relative to where it is today. Yeah. And so we're going to see solar continue to grow and be a much needed asset as battery gets lumped in there as well with longer battery storage.
No, absolutely. We're seeing an increase in battery storage ordinances at the local level and some of these discrete projects coming forward. So we know it's going to be big. You mentioned small modular nuclear reactors just now, and we know that that's going to be a big part of our energy landscape here in Virginia. I think there's a huge demand to see a lot of them come online. We know that they're 7 to 10 years out, just given some of the federal rules on permitting for nuclear plants. But can you speak on SMRs and their place and their value in our grid here in Virginia?
Sure. No. So Virginia, as like I mentioned, we run about a little over 30% nuclear power today. Of all of our power is nuclear at North Anna and then Surrey. And nuclear is great. It's on in the high 90% of the time. So of all the hours of the day and the year, it's running 95% of the time. So it's baseload power. It's always there for us regardless of the weather, regardless of the sun, regardless of the wind. Very important. And it provides a significant amount of power. I mean, literally, you can throw an SMR out there and, with a couple of modules, get a gigawatt of power added to one of these locations. Just recently, you saw the announcement by Dominion that they're looking at a small modular reactor at their North Anna site. Not that long ago, APCO came out and announced at their Joshua Falls site that they will be looking at a small modular reactor there. So it's going to be a big part of Virginia going forward to meet the supply or the demand of power in the Commonwealth.
Now, is the thought there to have SMRs a little bit more distributed at a larger number of sites across Virginia to serve that immediate community surrounding the SMRs?
So you're going to see it both ways. So we need more power for our grid. Yeah. We just know that the increase in power from typical businesses and residents coming into Virginia is going to demand more power. But as we see large-scale manufacturing, chip manufacturing, indoor agriculture takes a lot of power, data center growth, those facilities can actually bring their own power to the table. So instead of taking power off the grid and stressing out the grid, or having to utilize transmission and distribution infrastructure that is somewhat lacking, they can actually have a SMR on the same property or adjacent property to their data center or their manufacturing facility, literally powering their own facility. And at that point, it ensures that all the cost of that power is on that entity alone and not spread across the ratepayers who aren't benefiting from it.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. I know Governor Youngkin was very excited to see Virginia named the #1 state for business recently. I think a lot of that has to do with our power portfolio as well, and the good work you're doing at the department. How's the Commonwealth leveraging private investment to support some of this business growth and their energy needs? And how does the new announcement of the first fusion nuclear project in Chesterfield, the Commonwealth Fusion Systems project, play into that as well?
Sure. So there's a lot of investment in power and energy. And specifically, the governor's time is significantly around energy. If you see him speak, regardless of what he's speaking about, he always throws energy in there because it's very important, from simply keeping the lights on and having the influx of new residents that we're seeing in the Commonwealth to attracting businesses. And so when it comes to meetings, he's meeting with obviously the new Secretary of Energy quite often, the Secretary of the Interior quite often, on how we can grow Virginia power supply and what the federal government can do to help us. A lot of it has to do with the permitting process. So he's heavily vested on attracting new power generation into the Commonwealth, but also not just power generation. Whenever he talks about bringing new power, he wants the supply chain too. Whether it's solar, whether it's gas, whether it's nuclear, he wants the jobs that come with the manufacturing process. So we're really excited about that. Commonwealth Fusion was a lot of fun to be a part of. I'm a little bit older than you are, so when I was in high school, maybe when you were in junior high, I was, we were talking about fusion. It was always a decade away. It was more sci-fi, right? Yep. To be a part of actually bringing the first fusion reactor in the world to Virginia is pretty cool. And we're really excited about that. Fusion's always been seen as the holy grail of power. No waste, always on, completely clean. It's amazing. So it's exciting that we were able to put together a proposal and win that opportunity. And it'll be in Chesterfield, Virginia.
It's excellent. My home county, which I know we're very thrilled to see. Well, as you mentioned, Governor Youngkin always focuses on energy in a lot of his speeches. He was kind enough to join us at our legislative reception this past January, and I know the industry leaders in the room were so impressed by his depth of knowledge about the PJMQ, power versus energy, how we need to be developing and powering our own businesses with Virginia-made, increasingly clean energy. He's very knowledgeable on the topic, yes. and you're the right man for the job. We'll continue this conversation with Director Glenn Davis right after this. Well, welcome back to the America First Energy Podcast. We're continuing the conversation here with Virginia Department of Energy Director, Mr. Glenn Davis. Director, before the break, we mentioned Governor Youngkin's very proud of Virginia being named #1 state to do business. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we're #1 on a list we don't necessarily want to be on. We just outpaced California for the #1 energy importing state per capita. Our energy generation is not keeping up with our power-hungry industries here in Virginia. We know that energy independence and energy dominance as a state is just as important as it is on a national scale as well. Is energy independence possible here in Virginia? Do you think we can ever catch up to meet our own demand?
Oh, 100%. You're right. We've been importing significant power from the PJM grid, over 30%, almost 40%. It's something that we've kind of used as a crutch. It was there. The SEC, when they look at should our utilities build more power generation, they looked at is available from the PJM market and what's the cost. But we have to understand, and actually PJM did a great job of this just recently. They rang the fire alarm that over the next 7 years, the power that the PJM states, there's 13 states plus the District of Columbia, all the states north of Virginia, basically. The power that is imported by these states, including Virginia, is not going to be there for us as we look 7 to 10 years out. And a lot of times, in a lot of cases, because some of the bad decisions the northern states are making and less power coming into the grid. And so Virginia has to be able to control its own destiny, and we don't right now. If you can imagine a winter storm coming through Virginia, chances are if we have a winter storm, it's going to hit some of the northern states as well. And we all can't be vying for the same electrons when there's a lack of electrons. So we need to start producing that power in Virginia. And the thought is why shouldn't Virginia be producing all the power it needs inside the Commonwealth? And if there are times that we're producing in excess, the utilities can put that excess power on the grid, sell that power into the PJM marketplace for other states to pull down, and then the revenue derived from that comes back to the ratepayers. So that's the model that we should be looking at, and that's the model Governor Youngkin wants to look at, so we can truly control our own destiny.
I'm glad that's a big focus for you, because in my mind, developing and generating this energy here also focuses a whole other part of the equation of economic benefits right here in Virginia for jobs, for investment. So I'm glad to see that, and I certainly hope we can meet energy independence in the near future with a lot of these different technology mixes coming online. You mentioned PJM. PJM interconnection delays are a huge deal for projects trying to connect to the grid to power the grid without getting it off balance or off kiltered. Another huge challenge here in Virginia is the local permitting. Yes. Now, currently the permitting discussion is largely focused on the market-driven demand for more solar and storage, as we chatted about earlier. But by our count, about a third of Virginia counties have adopted local ordinances that don't allow for solar storage projects to be built and developed. Don't even bring the application. Right. Our county is closed for development. How do we meet that challenge here in Virginia? Because it's been a big challenge, and you have gigawatts upon gigawatts to meet that 30 number that we need to meet in the future, that are trying to apply to come online, but the localities increasingly just say no.
Right. No, and this is, I think Energy Right's been doing a great job of this from the education process, because that really is what it takes. Before I had this job, I was in the legislature for 10 years, as you mentioned. Prior to that, I did 5 years on Virginia Beach City Council, the largest city in this Commonwealth. And one thing that I get concerned is when I see a proposal taken to a local government, electeds, and they refuse to even look at the proposal. I mean, elected's job is to look at opportunities and decide whether or not it's a fit for their locality and what are the benefits to the citizens of that locality. And so it's always kind of taken me back a little bit that there are some that don't even want to accept and look at potential proposals that could come forward that may be able to benefit. So I hope that loosens up a little bit, because that's the first thing, is people need to look at the proposal and truly decide, does this actually fit? Is this actually a benefit to our locality? And the second piece is your organization and others continuing to do what you've done so well, which is educate local electeds, communities, on the benefits of having power generation in their area. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if we want the lights to stay on and we want to control our own destiny, we need power generation in the Commonwealth, and we need to be all of the above. Yeah. And so, one, people have to understand that. And then secondly, there's so much benefit to having this in their areas, whether it be property taxes, whether it be jobs, like you mentioned. And I think there needs to be more of an understanding of those types of opportunities, and I think that's where your organization and others come into play.
Well, thank you, Director. We certainly appreciate it, and we're enjoying doing this work at the local level, but I could not agree more. It's like when a county just shuts down and just refuses to entertain a proposal from landowners within that county. I mean, we're coming up at a crescendo here where we're not jiving with each other, and just when there's no consideration on the table.
I mean, if they want to vote no, they can vote no still,
sure,
but
sure.
At least look at the proposal and give it due consideration.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And that's an important element of retaining local control at this level. You have to use the power and authority that you have as a local county supervisor, city councilor, you name it, wisely. We have this enormous need. In my opinion, we need more energy independent counties as well. If we have energy independent communities, we'll have a more energy independent state and nation by extension. So appreciate your comments there, and we couldn't agree more. That education piece is huge. Those local benefits are being felt in the communities that have a lot of these clean energy projects already operating. Some counties have even lowered taxes as we get into budget season
Yes.
because of the incomes that these projects can make. You're taxing the energy that's being created. You're taxing it per megawatt as well. So as we get into budget season, I hope local government folks consider, if we had a couple more projects, maybe we wouldn't have to increase property taxes by 1%, 2%, 5% in a given year.
And we're having the same conversation about data centers. There are some localities in Northern Virginia that they don't want data centers, and you have to, share with them just, how much money they're getting in property taxes. There are areas that almost 40% of their property taxes for their locality is from data centers. And we share with them what their property tax bill would be if they didn't have this money. And you go out to Southwest Virginia and some areas there in Central Virginia where those localities are dying for data centers. In many cases, a data center will provide almost as much property tax as they're getting today. And it really would change things overnight for schools and roads and other things to benefit their community.
No, it would. And in my opinion, I see energy as kind of that leading industry to come into these communities to invest in areas where they're not seeing terribly much other investment come in, but it can attract high-tech industries, data center, high-tech manufacturing to those communities because they have a strong, stable, diverse, and increasingly clean energy portfolio.
100%. I mean, look, economic development follows power. If you don't have power, you don't get economic development. It's that simple.
Yeah. Well, we're sorry to say we're in the last year of Governor Youngkin's historic administration here in Virginia. And we've talked about how he's prioritized clean energy and Virginia-made energy development. What do we think Governor Youngkin's legacy on Virginia in terms of energy is going to be?
So a couple of things. He led out of the gate with a bold set of priorities, including SMRs. And back then it was a goal. It was his bold desire, but we had to make it happen, and he's achieved that. Two of the first announcements on SMRs in the nation are in Virginia. Then the fusion reactor is going to be in Virginia, so that has to be part of the legacy. Him just getting out in front of this, saying we're going to have a problem with power 7 to 10 years down the road. Let's start addressing it now. Has driven so much economic opportunity to Virginia because they appreciate a state that's proactive in this front. Additionally, the governor, when it comes to legislation, he's rang the bell many a times, and conversations have been had behind closed doors, and the other side starts to understand this, that the biggest threat to the continued growth of the economy in Virginia are the mandates from the Virginia Clean Economy Act. It's that simple. We cannot essentially ban natural gas in 2045. And just the thought that it is contemplated or it's in code that could happen really hinders companies looking and making the decision to come to the Commonwealth. He's rang that bell. Additionally, he is working extremely hard, and hopefully we are successful, to stop the cost of RPS compliance, which this September, actually, everyone's bill in Dominion territory is going to go up starting in September just because of this mandate that Dominion purchase additional RECs in the Commonwealth. And over time, over the next 10 years, I believe that amount will get to $297 a year for the average ratepayer in Dominion territory because of this mandate. So I think there's a good balance to be had here. The governor thinks there's a good balance to be had here. And even if he doesn't accomplish that in his final year, I think you'll see that conversation continue into the next administration and be addressed and ultimately be resolved at that time. But it would have started here.
Yeah, well, we're very grateful for Governor Youngkin's leadership on energy. All Virginians are going to be beneficiaries of seeing more Virginia energy come on board and the different industries that he's worked to attract to the Commonwealth. So we're certainly thankful for that. And Director, you're the first guest on our program. We couldn't think of anybody better to kick us off in this America First and Virginia First energy conversation. So we want to ask you a quick question to break the ice a little bit and allow our audience to get to know you a little bit better. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, past or present, who would it be and why, and what would you chat about?
Oh, my God. So that is a tough question, because as I think you and all your listeners would imagine, we all have a number of people we'd want to sit down and have conversations with, and I can give you a laundry list. Whether it be Ronald Reagan, George Steinbrenner, I mean, all for different reasons, obviously. If I could only pick one, maybe it's Alexander Hamilton, and this is before the musical, right? I mean, So you have to remember, I always wanted to go into business for myself. I kind of always wanted to go into politics. I was an economy major or economics major, and so Alexander Hamilton, basically being self-made, right, coming from basically nothing, being self-made, being bold and taking enormous risks on things, to have the vision of the bank, whether people like the concept of a national bank or not, the fact that he was able to get that, drive it home, the foresight that he had to understand that the power of the financial district is as great, if not greater, than the power of where you have the capital when he made that deal behind the closed doors, right?
The rumor had happened.
Yeah, the rumor had happened. So I've always been amazed by individuals that have had the foresight, taken the risk, kind of been self-made to change the world. And so he would probably be the one, but like I said, it's huge. I mean, Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs' management style, where he knew he was not going to be the smartest person in the room, but he surrounded himself with the smartest people available and will give them a directive and basically change the world. I don't have an Apple Watch. I don't have an iPhone. My wife does. She gets annoyed with me that I cause green bubbles on her text. But I admire what he did, how he did it. The fact, Apple fired fired Steve Jobs. Yeah. And then, as Apple's failing, he comes back and does it a second time, right? So there are so many, but I truly admire those that risk it all to make it happen, that come from nothing, and honestly change the world as we know it.
That's incredible. And we didn't even get into the Federalist Papers.
That's true. Yeah, the Federalist Papers, yes.
Hamilton did so much, even in his teens and 20s.
Yes.
Aide-de-camp to Washington.
Yes. When you look at it and you realize the age he was when he was an aide-de-camp and all this, you would just assume, he was, late 30s, maybe getting 40s. No. I mean.
It makes me feel bad.
You and I both. Yeah. It's, you think you've accomplished a lot, and you look at some of these guys and what they accomplished,
It's incredible.
Well, in my case, when they were half my age. So,
Well, excellent. Well, thank you, Director, for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us on the America First Energy Podcast. We'll be right back after this.
All right, well, welcome back to the America First Energy Podcast. We just wrapped up a conversation with Director Davis, and before we jump into a little bit of current events, Skyler, maybe just highlight a couple of the top line items that you took away.
Well, impressive guy. 10 years in House of Delegates, and then tapped by Governor Youngkin to lead his energy initiatives. We talked about a lot. It's great to see that he's in this role, understands the value of clean energy to Virginia's grid, and really understands the need to be producing more of it within our own state lines. So incredible guy, extraordinarily smart, is understanding all of this stuff at a very, very granular level, and is setting up Virginia very well in the future. So was glad to have him on as our inaugural guest on the podcast. Incredible guy. Thank you, Director Davis, for joining us today.
Yeah, and I think, personally hearing his comments, some of the things that I think we should all take away from the conversation are the things that he said about Governor Youngkin's energy plan, and how that relates to us as Virginians and Americans moving forward. He talked about in 2020, Governor Youngkin being kind of an innovator in the space of all the above, American-made, all-American energy, really prioritizing energy here at home during a time when, we were not really putting much focus on that in Virginia. Of course, he recognized that we were underestimating our growth here, but how that's changed over the last few years. And then really talking about how now that we're growing at such a fast clip, and how we are really innovating here in the state, how that all is a part of us as Virginians deciding our destiny. We, to move into the future, we've got to take essentially this issue by the reins and drive forward with innovation, resources, and research.
Yep, incredible conversation. And as we take a moment to zoom out a bit outside of Virginia, let's move over to the In the News segment. Of course, a lot of energy news coming out of Washington, D.C. on a very regular basis as President Trump works to secure and unleash American energy dominance. But we saw a big threat come through not too recently, and it's still in the news. Canada threatening to shut off power to the Northeast, where there are transmission lines that cross the nation's border. Ontario's premier first threatened to turn off the electricity and then threatened a 25% surcharge. I didn't realize that we had power lines crossing international boundaries and that a premier or foreign government could essentially tax or tariff their own exports as a way to try to punish the country in a trade dispute.
Right.
Did you realize that?
Well, I think, what's important is over the last 20 years or so, we've become more and more and increasingly intertwined with our neighbors, both, geographically right next to us and our allies abroad. And I think the reality or kind of the picture that's been painted with this situation is that in times of crisis, when we need energy, it's important that we have all of our ducks in a row and all of our bricks stable in our house before we start to rely on other people as well. And, whether or not this increases, decreases, or whatever, the reality is that, we in the United States need to have a secure grid individually as a nation, really kind of tying back to what Director Davis said, to control our own destiny as a country. I mean, it's not good for us to be beholden in terms of energy to anyone but ourselves.
No, it's huge, and I think it shocked a lot of people.
Right.
And it prompted President Trump to issue a national or localized electricity emergency to help prepare in the event that Canada chooses to shut off power to the few states that it does provide power to. But it underscores exactly what you just said. We need to be producing our own energy here, so there is no threat of a foreign government trying to turn off that electricity. We get 50% of our oil imports come from Canada.
Right.
We want to be producing more of that here within our nation's borders as well.
Well, and I think, too, it's important to kind of widen the conversation a little bit and talk about just briefly why this isn't just a matter of electrons being produced here, but by bringing energy here, we're, like Director Davis was talking about, we're expanding our job force. We're expanding our tax base. We're creating economic development. He made a great comment talking about economic development follows power. I mean, power is absolutely necessary for any type of investment. And so creating that power here at home is a way for us to really localize and generate that investment at the local level.
Yeah, and we got into that in the conversation as well, and it has some similarities to the Canada electricity dispute. But here in Virginia, we're importing 40% of every electron that we use comes from out of state. We're not producing enough. In fact, that electricity that we do import has increased in cost by 10x over the past year. Governor Youngkin mentioned in his State of the Commonwealth address, we're seeing other states starting to charge us more to power our own homes and businesses. Kind of very similar to that situation with what Canada decided to do.
Right, and I think the reality is Virginia is a great place to be a business. It's a great place to invest, bring your family, but that'll only be the case if we can continue to generate power. And generating power here in Virginia and making it so that we or our utilities could put electrons back on the grid for other states allows us to be a better partner in the region and kind of even the playing field a bit, so that we as Virginians can stand on our own, but we can also support our neighbors as well and really elevate our energy infrastructure here at home first, before either relying on other places, whether that be other nations or other states.
I couldn't agree more. An abundant energy supply, domestic energy supply, is an affordable one, just basic supply and demand.
Right, exactly. Thank you for joining us for the America First Energy Podcast, brought to you by Energy Right. You can find our show on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. You can find full videos to accompany our episodes on the Energy Right YouTube page. Today's episode was hosted by Skyler Zunk and Ben Wilson, produced by Kayla Ventura, with audio and visual support from Dylan Taylor. A big thank you to our guest, Virginia Department of Energy Director Glenn Davis. Join us next time for the America First Energy Podcast.